Welcome into another week of Cleveland Sports Realm. I'm joined alongside my two good friends, Nate Martin, who's actually from Pittsburgh, so more of an AFC North kind of guy, I guess, and decided to wear his Steelers gear on camera, which we're not too fond of, but we appreciate the support of him filling in. Jerome right now is sick, so he didn't oversleep like he did a couple weeks ago, but not feeling too well, but we got his brother to join us as well, Rob. How are you doing here, buddy?
Doing great. If you can't have one Pedikowskis, you might as well have the other, right?
Exactly. We appreciate you guys.
And this mine's better, too.
Yeah, they'll find that out in the next hour or so. They can come to their own judgments there. But Nate, how are you doing, man?
Great, man. I've been really excited for you and Jerome. I've been listening to the pod, and I'm excited to be here. I've been waiting. This is my moment.
Yeah, we're excited to have you. We can kind of get a third-party view, or maybe not even a third-party view, but maybe the other side view with you being a Steelers guy. You know, kind of give us some of your takes in regards to the Browns, some other teams alongside the AFC North, your Steelers included, and we can go from there. So why don't we just jump in AFC North just right off the bat? We're kind of looking at Bengals right now. They kind of went into Tennessee and won 37-27. Got a huge win. They're 6-8 right now, and they might actually. You think there's any chance they can sneak into the playoffs here?
I'll tell you what, man. The way Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase are playing right now, it's definitely possible. You know, they're on a 2-game win streak, trying to get to 3 this week. The Will Levis experiment is just not going well in Tennessee, and they really took advantage of that this week. So they look good, man. And I think if I'm one of the wild card teams right now, Denver or LA, I'm nervous about the Bengals coming up on my heels for sure.
Yeah, I'm nervous. I'd be nervous too. You know, there's just too much superstar power and too much scoring from that offense to really have too comfortable of a lead with only 3 games left. You know, I'd be worried myself. Rob, what do you think, buddy?
Yeah, the thing is, though, that defense is so suspect, and we've seen that, pretty much all year. It's been the tail of the tape for them. But, yeah, like you guys said, you got Joe Burrow under center. You're going to have a chance no matter what, and tossing the ball to Jamar Chase. I mean, it's just such a dangerous offense. It's potent. It's been doing wonders for my fantasy team this year. So, I mean, at the end of the day, I think they're going to have a chance. If you got Joe Burrow under center, you're going to have a chance.
Yeah, you got one of those duos. I mean, we're talking, top 5 quarterback throwing to, I would say, an unquestioned top 2, top 3 receiver in Jamar Chase. And, the offense is going to be humming always. And Chase Brown coming around now, even if they're not slinging the rock around, they found a hidden gem in him. And, it just seems like these teams in the AFC North, outside of the Browns, doesn't really matter where they're drafting, what round, what pick. They seem to hit on these picks, and, it comes to fruition this time of year with another potential 3 AFC North teams representing the AFC in the playoffs.
And I'll tell you what, too. I mean, some of the crap that I've been seeing on Twitter lately, just stop the cap with this, Joe Burrow, it might not be a top 5 quarterback. Jalen Hurts is better than Joe Burrow. Lamar Jackson's better than Joe Burrow. That's absolute malarkey in my eyes. I mean, Joe Burrow's playing at the top of his game right now, and we saw a few years ago what he did when he was at the top of the game, and he led a somewhat suspect offense all the way to the Super Bowl. So, I mean, at the end of the day, he's top 3 bona fide quarterback, and I can't stand some of the stuff I've been seeing on Twitter lately with that. So,
yeah, it actually reminds me of about 4 years ago, excluding the last couple of weeks with the Bengals, of that 2020 Houston Texans team, or Houston Texans team, I should say, where Deshaun Watson, when he was good, was going absolutely nuts in Houston, and they managed to really not be able to win. And I was kind of getting those same vibes from this Bengals team, but like you guys just mentioned, they've turned it around over the last couple of weeks and are looking to slide in as a 9, or not a 9, but a 7, maybe 6 seed in these playoffs. And I think you guys are right. I think they're a dangerous team come playoff time for sure.
I mean, Joe Burrow's no doubt playing at the top of his game. I mean, this is probably the best ball we've seen him play since he's been in the league. I mean, I think, honestly, coming into this year after, some of the injuries he's had, I was kind of worried about his durability. But, I mean, he's playing lights out. He would for sure be an MVP candidate.
Yeah, I think he's sitting at like 36 touchdowns right now.
We can pull up his stats. But, quickly, I just wanted to talk about the only problem for the Bengals really is, I mean, they don't have an easy schedule. I know we'll talk the Browns game this weekend for sure, but never a tough one or never an easy one, I should say, for Cincinnati. It seems like Cleveland really kind of has their number, and then they play the Broncos and at the Steelers to finish out the season. So it's a tough stretch, but I think this Bengals team is definitely capable of making some noise.
We can get into that a little bit later, but I think that was the Browns teams of the past couple years that had the Bengals number. I think the Browns are going to get absolutely mollywopped this weekend, but we'll see what happens.
It was funny a few weeks ago when we faced the Bengals. You know, I was excited because the Bengals were coming into Cleveland, and like you guys were just saying, we typically have their number in Cleveland at least. And the opening kick was a kickoff return for the Bengals, and from there it was just downhill. But yes, I mean, moving on, staying in the AFC North, but moving right along here. Steelers, Nate, your Steelers had a tough one in Philly this week. How'd that game? I didn't get a chance to see that game. How did everything look on your end? Was it just kind of the Eagles being a good team? Did the Steelers have any slip ups? Kind of how'd that game look?
I think I'll start with this. Going into that game, I didn't really like the Steelers' chances. There was obviously the narrative. They have not won in Philadelphia since 1965. They're now 0-11, their last 11 times playing in Philadelphia.
That's known for being a tough place to play, too.
Oh, it definitely is, but they definitely have the better of the PA State Championship, that's for sure. The Steelers went in there. They were down a couple guys, George Pickens, Deshaun Elliott, Larry Ogunjobi. Those are three obviously big players for them. But they, I think more so than that, it was just the game plan. Tomlin went in there and, they want to be this bully team and they're getting closer to that. But it's not going to work against the Philadelphia Eagles. They have a great offensive line, Jordan Davis and Jalen Carter in the middle. And the Steelers just kind of got bullied around, beaten at their own game. They went down 14 points in the first half, kind of clawed back a little bit, and then there was a crucial kind of Najee Harris fumble at the end of the third quarter. Steelers only possessed the ball twice in the second half. So, I mean...
Oh, wow. I did not know that.
Yeah, the Eagles killed 10.5 minutes on their last drive.
Wow.
Did not touch the ball after they gave it back at 10.5 minutes. I mean, that's... crazy.
The Eagles are another one of those teams. We had talked about it with the Steelers, Ravens, and Bengals, but the Eagles are another one of those teams, man, where it seems like no matter where they're drafting, players just fall to them. Jalen Carter fell to them in the teens, and then Quinyon Mitchell was looked at as like the best corner in the draft, and he slipped to the 20s.
Right, like
and
mid to late 20s.
Yeah, it's one of those where it's like, okay, this is the best player at this position, and it's a position of need for them, which of course is just kind of how the cards fall for them. And they've got two studs, and
yeah, and also, you're talking about it already, but credit to their front office bringing in Saquon Barkley. Obviously, was an absolutely massive power move for them. The Giants really screwed up with that one. We all know that.
Yeah, they screwed the pooch on that, man. They really did.
Yeah.
Here's the thing. I think the Steelers obviously game planned for Barkley, and they knew they had to shut him down. And I think he had 15 for 64. It's only 3.6 average.
Okay.
So they did contain him, but they basically just kind of dared Jalen Hurts to beat them with his arm, and he did. That offense is really hard to stop, man. Especially when they get Goddard back off IR, they have a ton of weapons.
Yeah, AJ Brown, Devontae Smith. You can run down the list there, offensive and defensive weapons. They're a stacked team, and I had said this a couple weeks ago. Even though the Lions are a phenomenal team, if the playoffs started today, I'm picking the Eagles to go to the Super Bowl and come out of the NFC.
Yeah, I don't believe in the Lions, and we can get into that a little bit later. But yeah, with the Eagles, they just look good top to bottom, and that was a team at the beginning of the year that a lot of people were saying. Another thing on Twitter people were saying is, the Eagles look suspect. They're not going to be the same team this year. But Jalen Hurts has just proved to be an absolute baller in this league, and while I don't think he's necessarily a top 5 quarterback, he's still going to win you a lot of games in the regular season, and he's shown to get it done in the postseason too. So
yeah, absolutely, and he's dynamic enough. He can play within the system and play out of the system. That's something I like a lot about him. He's a good improviser, good scrambler, and if he's on the run or in the pocket, he's typically making those throws. So the Eagles are a very dangerous team. And kind of, Rob, going back to your point of the Eagles bringing in Saquon Barkley, we can shift gears actually to the Giants game, because the Giants actually they hosted Baltimore this week. So we're sticking in the AFC North and sticking in the NFC East. And the Ravens did typically like what you would expect against this Giants team, 35-14. I don't really have too much to say about this one. I didn't really get to see the game either too much, but I think the score kind of speaks for itself. I'm sure everything was humming for the Ravens, and the Giants were doing their typical clown stuff.
Yeah, and while we're on the topic of good quarterbacks, we talked Joe Burrow, we talked Jalen Hurts. This guy Lamar, I get it. He has the postseason bugaboos where it's like, he can't get it done. He can't get it done. But I mean, this guy has just proven to be an absolute stud in this league. I mean, I would give the MVP to him today if I was voting. But it's crazy that just a couple years ago, people were still saying he can't throw, and he's absolutely out here airing the ball out.
Oh, that was me. I couldn't have been more of a disbeliever in Lamar Jackson, and I had been for a while ever since he was drafted. And right now, his rushing numbers have always been there, and his passing numbers, I guess, in terms of volume, like the amount of yards he throws for and stuff, haven't really been there. They're there this year.
Yeah.
The passing yards are there too. The guy is. I would probably say he's the front runner for MVP too. I've never had to eat my words more on a player before, I don't think. But yeah, Lamar Jackson's unbelievable. And speaking of Lamar Jackson, they're hosting the Steelers this week, Nate. And the Steelers typically have the Baltimore number. So you feeling confident going into Baltimore? I know you guys squeaked past them in Pittsburgh just a few weeks ago.
Well, I mean, it's very weird being a Steelers fan these days. We won 8 of the last 9 against the Ravens, right? But you never feel good going to Baltimore. I saw, and I haven't actually been able to verify this, but I don't believe Lamar Jackson has ever played the Steelers in Baltimore with fans in attendance. He tends to either be hurt, or there was the COVID year that he couldn't play. The COVID year was the only year he has played the matchup in Baltimore. So we'll see what happens. We've won 8 of the last 9, but we've gotten to play a lot of backup quarterbacks and things of that nature. So we'll see.
Yeah. And like we're just saying, I mean, in my opinion, he's kind of just reached a new level this year with those passing numbers. I'm pretty sure he leads the NFL in yards per attempt right now, up there in touchdown passes. So yeah, he's really airing it out this year. And I wonder if that was something that he was here in the chat or online or online, and people saying he can't throw, and he said, okay, I'm going to show y'all this year, and that's exactly what he's done. So credit to him, and maybe that's also something that John Harbaugh has challenged him to do within the offense is throw the ball a little bit more and not rely so much on his legs. So.
Well, they've invested a lot to try to get him receivers. I mean, that's been a recurring, narrative, and, they've done their best to get him some weapons down there. Zay Flowers obviously having a great year, bringing in Derrick Henry to add kind of another dimension to the offense.
Yeah.
But looking specifically at this Pittsburgh matchup, I mean, it is bizarre for me because Lamar Jackson, I acknowledge that he is an incredible player. I mean, he has a chance to be a 3-time MVP after this year, but he just tends to put up really pedestrian, if not bad numbers when he plays the Steelers.
Yeah.
If you look back to the last matchup, 16 of 33, 207, a TD and an interception, added 4 of 46 on the ground.
That's got to be his first game of the year, right?
I would think so,
Yeah.
right? But I mean, we tend to create a lot of turnovers when we play them, and I think the Steelers are going to need more than one to win this one.
Yeah, for sure. And the Steelers, that's something that they've always been known for, I think, is just even if they're giving up the yards, they find a way to make the big turnover to keep them in the game or to seal the game. And that's something that you have to respect as an AFC North opponent and just an opponent in general when looking at this Steelers team. They're a difficult team to face, in defensively, I should say, just week in and week out, year after year. It's unbelievable.
Well, with the Steelers and Nate, close your ears. I mean, they're just a well-coached team right now, and they, in my opinion, they always have been. But that's back and forth that Cleveland and Pittsburgh have had for a long time. Pittsburgh
why is that? Why is that? Not to interrupt you, Rob. I apologize for that, but why is that a narrative amongst Steelers fans? And I gotta ask because. If I had Mike Tomlin as head coach, I would be praising the heavens every time I woke up, I think.
My honest opinion is it's because of the type of coach Mike Tomlin is. I'm sure, anyone listening to this has also probably been listening to Hard Knocks, and if you're watching that, you can see, I mean, he is like a real leader, motivator. I mean, even compared to the other coaches. I mean, that guy can get people to run through a brick wall. I mean, people want to play for that guy. But you operate a team like that in a league that now is very X's and O's driven. And that's just never been, I'm not saying, obviously he has a great understanding. He's coached great teams. He's known for his defense. But I just think, this week was a great example. Poor game plan going into a huge 5-star matchup. And, we've obviously seen them lose to inferior opponents. It's been a trend under his tenure. So, he definitely does get a lot of flack from Pittsburgh media and Pittsburgh fans, but nationally, obviously, very well respected.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And remind me again. I know obviously one of the 3 losses was to the Browns. But who were the other 2? Because I know when we were in Pittsburgh, because you were at the game with Jerome and I, like who, and you had mentioned the 2 other teams that you guys played down to the competition. I forget who the other 2 losses were.
Yeah, so we lost to Dallas. I mean, albeit while they still had Dak Prescott, but that was not a good Dallas team. They were short Micah Parsons in that game as well. Obviously, a huge loss for them. But we lost to them on Sunday Night Football, and then we also lost to the Colts. And we just have a terrible time in Indianapolis. It's a tough place for us to play.
That game.
But but I mean, so like this Philly loss is like the first one where you can say, okay, they were beaten by a team that is better than they are.
Well,
you know what I mean?
It's the first loss with Russell Wilson as quarterback, right? Oh no,
Browns. He lost to the Browns.
I don't know why I just blanked on that.
Yeah,
what an idiot.
Come on now, Kev. Come on.
That's a bad one
this
out of
is
me.
the Cleveland sports round,
right?
Yeah, it's my bad.
I want to ask y'all real quick while we were just on the topic. I was thinking about Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen, and obviously that's the 2-horse race for MVP right now. So if y'all were voting, who you taking?
Lamar or Josh?
Yeah.
I'd say Lamar probably, and the only reason is I just think he's a better quarterback. I think he's done more for their team, and Josh Allen is a great football player, and I think a lot of people on the outside looking in look at Josh Allen not having an MVP, and it's kind of that whole thing to look back on when teams were voting against, or I should say, the voters voted against LeBron,
right,
even though LeBron was putting up monster
Exactly.
numbers every year because they wanted a little bit of variety,
right.
or some parity, I should say, when it came to the MVP voting.
Yeah.
I would give it to Lamar. Josh Allen is a very deserving candidate. I just think I don't want to give him the award just because he hasn't gotten it yet.
Go ahead, Nate.
Oh no, go for it.
I was just gonna say that it would be crazy if Lamar did end up winning the MVP this year, because now he's a 3-time MVP, and you're looking at, you're talking about rarefied air here. There can only be 5 or 6 3-time MVP quarterbacks in NFL history. I don't know.
Yeah,
Correct me
maybe.
if I'm wrong, but that's rare air that he's in right there. But go ahead. What's your take?
Oh no, I'd be giving it to Josh Allen. But mostly it's because I am not really a believer in most of the offense around him. They brought in Amari Cooper. He has not really worked out there. Keon Coleman has been injured. He's been up and down. He doesn't even have 500 receiving yards on the year. I think he'll be a good player, but Dalton Kincaid's been disappointing. It's really been Khalil Shakir has been like their big weapon this year.
Okay.
The running backs too. He's thrown to Ray Davis and Ty Johnson. Do you guys even know who that is? I just think their offensive line play has been really good. Brady, their OC, has really done some great things. He's throwing the ball quick this year for the most part, getting it out of his hands, not taking sacks, and I just think he's elevating the team. But it's funny, his comp was Ben Roethlisberger, and Ben Roethlisberger never won an MVP. So I think Josh Allen will get there even if he doesn't this year. But it speaks to the level of quarterback play in the NFL right now that you can play as well as he is and not be bona fide for sure MVP.
Yeah. And Rob, to your question, three-time MVPs in NFL history. We've got Jim Brown with 3, Johnny Unitas with 3, Brett Favre had 3, Peyton Manning had 5.
Wow.
Tom Brady had 3, and Aaron Rodgers had 4.
Yeah, so
this would be
6 guys?
the sixth person would be Lamar Jackson.
To think about that Lamar would tie Tom Brady for MVPs, that's like a baffling statistic. But again, I don't think it's a closed race right now. I definitely think Josh Allen he's going to get some voters for sure for all the reasons you just mentioned, Nate. So we'll see what ends up happening with that. But if I was a voter, I'd give it to Lamar.
But yeah, if I could just touch real quick before we wrap up the Baltimore-Pittsburgh conversation. Obviously, T.J. Watt hurt at the end of last game, low ankle sprain, limited participant in practice, so we'll see if he goes. Obviously, if not, becomes an even tougher task. Pickens, Elliott, Ogunjobi not practicing yet, so we'll see. But the Steelers look like they're going to be down some guys. I think it's Ravens by a touchdown right now, so it's going to be a tough task for sure.
Yeah, I think I'd go Ravens as well by probably a touchdown as well. I kind of want to look at the spread at that and see if.
Yeah, it's 6.5. It's 6.5 right now. So
okay.
and as I mentioned before, Pittsburgh has won 8 of the last 9, but they've all been decided by less than a touchdown. So
is that on prime time?
It's actually a Saturday game this week.
That's right.
Yeah,
It's
okay.
weird that the NFL is overlapping with college football, which I know we'll talk about. But Saturday 4:30, Steelers Ravens.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, it should be a good one.
Yep.
Should be a good one. Is that the only game on? Do you know? Or,
on Saturday.
Yeah.
I believe the Texans and the Ravens play on Saturday too, and then the Texans and the Ravens, and then the Pittsburgh and Baltimore are playing on Christmas. I think that's the way the schedule. Both teams have to turn around and play on Wednesday. So yeah,
Damn,
interesting.
Yeah, interesting layout for the NFL.
Yeah, absolutely
schedule.
Interesting layout, and
they like to make their money.
They absolutely do. They absolutely do. Now, let's switch gears. We've talked a lot about Bengals, Ravens, and Steelers. Let's kind of dig into the Browns right now. I don't know if we want to recap too much of that Chiefs game. It was a pretty ugly one, but only ups, I guess I should say. Jerry Jeudy once again another 5+ catch performance. This is now 7 weeks in a row of this. And, he even had a higher volume than he did in the Denver game. They gave him more targets. He had more catches. Jerry Jeudy's coming around, and I think he's, we've talked the last few weeks. We've debated, wide receiver 2, wide receiver 1, and it sounds like, we might get into that again because I think it's a good topic to get into. I think he's solidifying himself. He's top 6 or top 5 right now in yards amongst receivers in the league. Do you think he's solidified himself as a number 1 receiver?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think he has at this point because if you look at the quarterback play he's been dealing with this year, it's been abysmal, and he's still put up these insane numbers so far. I mean, the guy he's fast, he gets open, he's physical. I mean, he's really everything you want in a wide receiver 1. I mean, you can have the debate whether he is or not, but I think he's done everything this year to show he has. And let's give credit to Andrew Berry. That is ultimately going to look like a good move. Let's hope that it has some legs to it over the next couple years. But right now, I mean, in the first year of his contract, ending up trading Amari and then keeping Jeudy as wide receiver 1 is probably looking like maybe his best move ever as Browns GM.
Yeah, it's up there considering that we traded a 5th and got Amari Cooper in a 6th and then flipped Amari for a 3rd. A couple years later, you improve your draft pick and get a younger receiver with Jerry Jeudy and give up about the same capital. I think that Zadarius Smith trade was still a pretty good trade.
Yeah.
From Andrew Berry. He's made a couple. His trades have actually been, outside of the Deshaun Watson trade. Let me preface that. His trades haven't been too bad. Yeah.
I mean, I was not a Jerry Jeudy believer, really, coming into Cleveland at least, just based off what he had done in Denver with the injuries again. But obviously, he's a guy super high pedigree. This is the type of play we expected. I think everyone expected when he came out of Alabama. So,
for sure.
I mean, the wide receiver 1-2 discussion. If you're capable of putting up these type of numbers with the attention he's getting from defenses, you're a wide receiver 1.
Yeah,
So.
and to your point, Nate, of him being drafted, obviously he was a first-round pick, and I think he gets overshadowed a lot because he was in the same draft as Jefferson and CeeDee Lamb, who were drafted in the same round, same first round, obviously, but they were drafted a little bit later. So I think he got looked at as a bust too early because of just he's got 2 top 3 receivers that are in his draft class. It's hard to outperform that.
Yeah, I mean, definitely is. And you take a look at, like Nate said, he's coming out of Alabama, so you expect him to be a top tier guy, and just never really figured it out with the Broncos and with Russ. And I don't think the coaching situation was great with Sean Payton there for that 1 year, and he probably should have taken that step last year. But hey, I'm more than thrilled that he did with the Browns taking that step.
Yeah, if he took the step last year, we would have had to give up a lot more for him, I think.
No question about it.
Well, the contract already looks like a good value to me.
Definitely good value. I mean, I think every Browns fan was thinking, oh my gosh, what the hell are we doing
gave $50
here?
million to him immediately.
Right.
Yeah.
You traded for him, and it's like this guy's never had a 1,000-yard season. What the fuck are we doing,
Yeah.
I mean, it was ridiculous, and now 10 games later, 12 games later, it's looking like a golden move. So
yeah, it's looking like a golden move, and we can shift right now to the guys who are throwing him the football. It looks like Jameis Winston, benched for DTR this week. And Jerome and I had mentioned this a few weeks ago. I think we had said that when we get to 10 or 11 losses and we only have a couple of wins, we wouldn't mind seeing DTR in there. And the Browns must have been listening to that episode because that's exactly what they did. And I don't hate it. I don't love it. I'm very meh on the move to DTR. I don't know how you feel, Rob, you being a Browns fan yourself.
I mean, it's just maybe in the grand scheme of things, we haven't really been exposed to him that much. I forget exactly how many games he ended up starting last year. He did beat the Steelers, but
Ravens, and then it was either Chargers or Broncos.
Yeah. I mean,
Because Flacco came in for one of those games and then never looked back.
at the end of the day, it's like, Winston's not doing you any favors by throwing the ball to the other team every other play, so you might as well see what you have. But at the end of the day, I don't think he's going to be QB1 by next year. So if he can take the step, wonderful. If not, I'm not expecting much. It just sucks so bad as a Browns fan, feeling like we're in the same position that we've been battling our whole life, is quarterback problem. Really, the only time we had any kind of longevity or any kind of stability was when Baker was here, and even he sucked for 2 years out of his 4-year tenure here. So it's like it feels like back to square one, and it really sucks. So there's a lot to say.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I don't.
It's unfortunate.
I agree with you in that I don't even know if there can be. I mean, he could impress us, but I don't see any way he's going to be QB1 next year, no matter how well he plays. But I do think it determines what you do. I mean, because you might still have to bring Winston back. You guys are obviously planning on bringing in a new young quarterback next year. I think you're trying to find out if we have to play DTR. Can he win us some games? Of course, now there is the whole, is Deshaun Watson coming back? Fans are upset that they seem committed to him. So I guess that, maybe changes the plans. But at least in my mind, for most of the year, I've been thinking Cleveland's going to add a quarterback through the draft, whether it's early or middle rounds.
Yeah, so I think that's 100% an option, and I think the Browns are going to look at that, especially if they get into, if they do end up with a top 5 pick. If the Raiders or the Giants, who hold the number 1 and 2 spots right now, aren't in love with either of these two guys, and Sanders and Cam Ward. I'm personally a pretty big fan of Cam Ward, but if they don't fall in love with them and the Browns can trade up and hopefully not give up a ton of capital, I think they're going to look into it. Another option, I think there's going to be a few veteran quarterbacks that are on the market this offseason too. The Kirk Cousins thing in Atlanta right now isn't going too well. They're looking at Michael Penix, and I saw something with Kirk's contract where they have to guarantee him another $10 million if they don't cut him by a certain date or something like that, or trade him by a certain date. So it'll be interesting to see how that moves in the offseason with Kirk Cousins and the Falcons. Daniel Jones, nobody knows what's going on there. I could totally see the Browns looking at Daniel Jones.
I wouldn't hate that at all if I were you, to be honest. I think he might end up working out somewhere. Honestly,
I think he could as well. I mean, everybody we've heard from in that Giants organization, player wise, has said, and Malik Neighbors just said this a few weeks ago when they cut him. Like, I believe his exact quote was, "DJ was not the problem. We have the same problems without him." So it's interesting. I don't know. I don't know what's going on with the Giants, and obviously, Daniel Jones now in Minnesota as a backup. But
yeah. Well, let me say a couple of things on that. First of all, you guys touched on the Shedeur Sanders thing. I like Shedeur Sanders. I think he's going to end up being a good NFL quarterback somewhere, just not in Cleveland. I think with Cleveland, there's a lot of off-the-field things that happen in Cleveland. And when you bring in a quarterback that's going to end up causing a media circus like that, Cleveland has proven that they don't do well in those situations. I mean, obviously with the Watson thing.
Johnny Manziel.
Yeah. When you have a quarterback like that that's going to, bring all eyes to Cleveland, I mean, it's not going to end up working out for them. It never really does. I do think a quiet move, like you guys said, would be bringing in Daniel Jones, and he's the kind of guy that I think Stefanski could win with. He's the prototype that I feel like Stefanski could really coach up. Just do the simple things, hit the open guys, a lot of shallow routes, a lot of screen passes, that kind of thing. And I think Daniel Jones could end up working out here for that reason.
It's funny that you bring that up, actually, because I was at the Giants game earlier this year. Browns hosted the Giants, and it seemed like when Daniel Jones was hitting his spots, we could not stop that Giants offense. And granted, Malik Neighbors had a huge game. He had a couple big-time catches. But Daniel Jones, he was finding the open person, and just it was within that 5 to 7 yard range of what I think you're referring to right now.
Yeah,
just hit the open guy and go from there. Don't try to be a superstar.
Now, I think in the broader quarterback conversation, like, there may be a slight trend away from signing some of these kind of like highly paid veterans. I mean, I guess the quarterback market in general, it's like $40 million for a quality starting quarterback.
Yeah.
And while the Kirk Cousins deal isn't as bad as obviously some of the others we've seen, Russell Wilson not working out in Denver, Deshaun Watson here, I think the method to win, unless you have a true top five quarterback, is you have to land one of these young guys and win while they're on a rookie deal. I mean, that seems like the trend right now. Yeah. Obviously Russell Wilson is working out okay in Pittsburgh for us right now, but we're not paying him anything. If we were paying him $35 million a year, the standard would be a lot different. So, it'll be interesting to see this offseason what happens with a lot of these veterans. I think Justin Fields is another interesting name that some of these teams might look at, whether it be one of the New York teams or maybe even Cleveland is a potential backup. So we'll see. But I think, a lot of these teams are chasing young athletic talent at the QB position.
Yeah, and I just want to reiterate again, I think when you're not overcomplicating things in the Browns offense, it's shown that they can win that way. You look at a guy like Case Keenum that came in, won some games for them. When if they're going to bring in a guy like Daniel Jones, I think Stefanski could coach him up to win games. When you ask a lot out of a Browns quarterback, i.e., Baker Mayfield in 2021, i.e. Baker Mayfield in 2019, i.e. Deshaun Watson since he's been here. When you ask them to be the focal point of the offense, it never really ends up panning out. So I think, with the weapons that the Browns do have, Judy, Jerome Ford seems like he might be able to be a serviceable back in the future, even though I've talked a lot of shit on him in the past. I think that, they could eke out some wins next year for sure if you bring in a guy like a Daniel Jones. And that's a good point. I never even thought about Daniel Jones until you guys just brought it up. So, I do like that kind of move for them.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you. And it's funny that the Browns thought they needed a Deshaun Watson because the offense was never really the problem. It was the Joe Woods defense that was giving up 30 points a week. And they thought, we got to go out and get a superstar quarterback. We're not scoring enough. No, you just needed Jim Schwartz at D.C. That's it. And then you got him, but you got him a year and a half, 2 years too late. So it is what it is with the quarterback situation right now. When it comes to, if they want to get one of these two guys, I don't think Shedeur is going to be a great college quarterback. Jerome and I were talking last week, or maybe it was 2 weeks ago, about the offensive lineman from LSU, Will Campbell, a guy me and him are both high on if they decide to go offensive line. We're huge on him. But I started actually thinking, I haven't really studied this draft at all. So I went and was watching some film on a couple different players, Shedeur Sanders and Cam Ward specifically, to decide if I even like either of these two guys. And I can't help but hate watching Shedeur Sanders play football. Like I don't see, he's in the pocket for 7-8 seconds, rolling around. You don't get that long in the NFL, man. You're not quick enough. You're not fast enough to get out of the pocket if need be. And people want to say, look at his completion percentage, 74% completion percentage. Obviously, and a very impressive statistic. But if you give me 7-8 seconds to throw, I'm sure the scramble drill can work out pretty well in my favor.
Especially tossing the ball to a guy like Travis Hunter as well.
Exactly. So, which leads me to, again, not Travis Hunter, but to the other quarterback prospect, Cam Ward. I actually love this guy. I was watching. He improvises when he needs to. He makes throws in the pocket when he needs to. He makes throws on the run. He scrambles. And I think he does, going back to what we were talking about with Jalen Hurts, making plays inside of the offense and outside the offense. I think he's a complete quarterback. I know he makes some risky throws, but if you want a superstar quarterback, I've seen all of these Josh Allen, Deshaun Watson when he was good, Pat Mahomes, Jalen Hurts. They're all making these risky throws that turn into, big plays. I think Cam Ward's a higher floor and higher ceiling guy than Shedeur Sanders. I like him a lot. Now, whether he's worthy of a top 3 pick, I don't know, but I like him a lot more than Shedeur.
If you give me the choice, I'd take Cam Ward, and the reason being is, like I stated before about Shedeur, I'm just not big on these media circus, media frenzy kind of guys. And I think it also, character has a lot to do with how you perform as a quarterback in the NFL. You need to be a team-first guy. And I'm sorry, Shedeur Sanders going over to wave his watch at the student section after every win doesn't speak to me as a team guy.
Well, that, and also to that point, Cam Ward, he was a 0-star prospect coming out, or 0-star, prospect coming out of high school. Was at, I believe it was Washington State for a couple of years. I'll actually look up that college for a couple of years. Won there, came to Miami, 10-2. He's been at multiple different programs. He's won there, and I'm a fan of the guy.
I didn't know he was a 0-star. That's actually crazy to me because I think he's like a super athlete, and I don't know I don't know that it's in like the Lamar Jackson sense, of course, but like the way he plays is just there's a calmness about it. The pressure doesn't get to him, and like to be able to play at kind of the speed it seems like he plays in college is just really impressive to me. Yeah. I will say I think Cam Ward's my QB1 for this draft, but I'm not super high on him. I think it's a lot like the 2021 QB draft class. I think Cam Ward, had it been last year, he would have been like the 4th or 5th QB off the board. So again, I think he's my QB1, but I agree with you. I don't know if I would personally spend a number 1 or number 2 overall pick on this guy. It's going to be a risk for whoever does it.
Oh, of course. And this draft class actually reminds me a lot of the 2016 and 2017 quarterback draft classes. 2016 they said it was a horrendous draft class, and Jared Goff went number 1. Had a pretty decent career so far, and Carson Wentz in year 2 or year 3 was on an MVP trajectory until his injury. So I think this in 2018 was looked at as one of the best quarterback draft classes of all time, and we had Josh Rosen, who has done nothing in the NFL, Sam Darnold, who's just recently come around, and Baker, who's had an up and down career, and then obviously there's Josh Allen and Lamar, who have been superstars since year 2 in the league. So I think it just goes to show these draft classes are so unpredictable, and even 2017, I'd mentioned that, but Mitch Trubisky was the number 1 guy in that draft. It was looked at as a horrendous quarterback draft class, but then the next 2 quarterbacks, Pat Mahomes and Deshaun Watson. So it's crazy how these draft classes work out. It truly is just I don't know the right word for it, but it's just it's random. It's luck of the draw, and kudos to the scouts who actually get it right.
Right. Well, I mean, it's weird this year because it feels like there's a ton of big names. I mean, Cam Ward is a guy that popped up this year. But I mean, you're talking about Shador, Cam Ward, Jalen Milroe, Quinn Ewers, Carson Beck.
The names are there.
Those are big names. But I think everybody is maybe, I don't know if disappointed is the right word, but I don't think any of them really lived up to that true QB1 type hype. You know what I mean? At least in my opinion.
Absolutely not. And we were watching the Texas-Georgia game, the SEC championship game, and Quinn Ewers, I've never been more like unimpressed with like a top quarterback prospect per se. Like, doesn't make a lot of good reads, doesn't really know when to evade the pocket, and not that I ever played quarterback, and I'm not going to pretend that I'm an expert at being able to play quarterback, but from watching bad Browns quarterback plays, like Quinn Ewers looked like a 2009 Browns quarterback in that game.
Well, in a Sark system too, it's like it's a great system for quarterbacks. So it doesn't make a lot of sense. The 2 Georgia games really kind of have me concerned about what Texas can do in the college football playoff.
Same.
I'm not,
Same.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And shifting gears, we're going to stay on the Browns for just a little bit longer, but different topic here, and it's a topic I hate to discuss, and hopefully we don't spend too much time on it. But a quick question for both of you: has Nick Chubb played his last down as a Cleveland Brown?
I don't think so, personally.
Okay. I like that answer.
Personally, I don't. I think it's kind of a culture thing. I think he wants to be here. I think he still has value. I will say I don't think he is a running back 1 anymore. I think he belongs, in kind of a 2-headed monster, dual backfield type system. So, I do think you guys should probably, I like Jerome Ford too. But, I think you guys should add to that room, but I think Nick Chubb will stay.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's been a big concern about the Browns for the last 5 years since they started to get competitive again. It's, oh my gosh, we need to figure it out with the quarterback and figure it out with everything else because we're going to waste the prime of guys like Chubb and Garrett and Ward. And it seems like that's kind of what they did. They ended up wasting the prime of Chubb. And if you look, I mean, a bona fide RB1 like Nick Chubb when he was, I mean, the shelf life on these guys is just not that long.
Yep.
I mean, Saquon Barkley is sort of an anomaly right now. But at the end of the day, you're going to get 3 to 4, maybe 5 superstar years out of a running back before they really start taking the brakes off. And this guy's now exploded his knee twice. And now he just broke his foot. I mean, when he came back this year, it sucked to watch because, he's great for the culture. He's Batman around here. Okay, big whoop. He had no explosiveness. He wasn't hitting the holes. He obviously couldn't read anything. I mean, it was kind of sad to watch just how piss poor he was playing, in my opinion. But
to me, and sorry, but I just feel like that is an injury that is so difficult to come back from in general, but to come back in the middle of a season and hop on a moving train is just so difficult.
Yeah,
It's one of those injuries that your body continuously gets stronger after the fact. I think obviously everybody was so upset because you had hoped he had worked so hard to come back and be available for at least part of the year.
Yeah.
And, it didn't end up mattering at all. So,
Yeah.
I do think obviously the broken foot is a big concern. The lack of explosiveness coming off the knee. But, I think if he can come back fully healthy next year, I think he still definitely has a place in the NFL and on this team.
I mean, you can give him, third down back carries, that type of volume, 5 to 10 carries a game, that kind of
usage.
Yeah, that kind of usage. But anything more than that, it's not going to end up panning out.
Yeah, it stinks. And going back to your point, Rob, of him being, I think he's 28 now, you had said, and I had mentioned this a couple weeks ago to Jerome after Chubb had been back for a couple weeks, and he was only getting like 3 yards a carry on average, and I had brought up to him, I was like, do you think Nick Chubb is washed right now? And he, as we're all Cleveland fans, we don't want to admit it, and
except one.
Yeah. Yeah, we don't want to admit it, but Jerome was like, no, I don't think so. I think he just needs to get his legs back out in front of him. And, I had said, he's 28 years old, man. This was, the Todd Gurley fell off at this age. Le'Veon Bell fell off at this age. Like, this tends to be, like, right before you hit 30, like this 28-year or age 28, age 29, you start to see these running backs fall off. And I think we have seen the last of elite Nick Chubb.
Yeah.
And I think I agree with both of you guys. If he's getting the ball 10 times a game, and hopefully, a 4.5 yard average, because he typically averages like 5. It's something ridiculous like that, and I hope he finishes his career here still. I don't want to ever see him wearing another uniform, and I don't care how much we pay him as long as Nick Chubb's wearing brown and orange. I don't care how good he is. I don't care how bad he is. Just keep Nick Chubb in Cleveland.
Yeah, well, not a surprising take from the eternal optimist Jerome, saying he just needs to get his legs back under him. But yeah, I mean, the proof's in the pudding. He wasn't there this year. I mean, I always think about when you talk about running backs like this, like the name that always comes to my mind, and you mentioned Le'Veon Bell, but the name that always comes to my mind is Todd Gurley. I mean, that was a guy that was
historic fall off.
The best running back in the NFL. It wasn't even a competition.
It was like one off season, and then he was bad.
Every guy was trying to get him in the fantasy football drafts. I mean, he was the number one guy in the league, and that he just boom off a cliff. Like, where the hell did this guy go?
Let's be, and maybe I'm sounding like the optimist now, a Pittsburgh guy of all things, but the Browns' running game in general hasn't been what it was, and obviously a huge part of that is Chubb, but like they don't have the same talent or youth on like the offensive line that they did when
I
it
was
was
just
in
gonna
its
say.
prime. So I mean that's a huge part of it too.
Yeah.
I really do. I think Chubb has a place on the Browns. I think he can be a quality running back. At 10 carries a game, I think that's a very good workload. I think you're going to see him come back next year.
And in every locker room, you need your locker room guys. You need your Batmans in the locker room for what it's worth. So I mean, I'm in agreement. If you can bring him back and have him 5 to 10 carries, keep him as a presence around the locker room and small usage, then he definitely has a place on the team. But he's not RB1. We all know that.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not in the camp of draft Ashton Jeanty.
I'm not in that camp either. I'm not for every. I mean, we see these good running backs get taken in every single round. I can't stand when these teams reach for running backs anymore. Even Bijan Robinson, as great of a running back as he is, I thought it was absurd that the Falcons just kept drafting offense.
Yeah, and you can find a guy out there. I mean, look at all the running backs that moved around this offseason. Josh Jacobs, Saquon Barkley, the biggest names. You can find a team that's willing to dump salary on a really, really good running back still and bring him in as RB1. And I'm not saying I can't think of any names this offseason that are going to be available right away, but eventually there could be somebody out there for the Browns to turn to.
Of course, and if you have an average offensive line, you pretty much can get an average running game, it seems like. So,
I mean, it's the most replaceable position in the NFL still. Saquon is an anomaly, of course, but, running backs are affordable. We're always finding undrafted free agents having success at the NFL level. So, and honestly, if I'm talking draft needs for the Browns, I don't know, the running back, maybe it's number 5 on my list. You know?
I mean,
Maybe.
you got to go.
So, I definitely wouldn't be looking at any top-tier running backs in this upcoming draft.
Yeah, you definitely got to go offensive line and quarterback.
Those
I
are the
think.
top two, I think,
Yeah.
hands down.
Yeah.
Hands down. Maybe like a wide receiver too.
Linebacker, maybe.
Yeah. Well, that's a good one because we don't even know the word on JOK, do we?
I haven't heard anything.
Yeah, what's the latest
I don't
from
have
Mary
any
Kay? At
sources or
first,
anything.
yeah. So you guys can tell me because at first she was making it sound like it was a career-threatening injury after it initially happened.
Yeah, and like 2 hours
Well,
later,
she-
she
yeah.
strung it back.
Well,
Right, and then it
she's-
was like, oh, well, he might, he's obviously got to be on IR, but we'll see after that.
She's also
So,
queen of the dramatics. We
yeah.
all know that.
I mean,
Yeah.
at this point, I
shout out
obviously-
Mary Kay though.
Yeah,
Mary Kay. She used to love asking the whenever we draft a player, she go, how does it feel to be in the same city as LeBron? Get out of here.
Yeah.
Like, nobody cares. We're not talking Cavs here,
Yeah.
Mary Kay.
Yeah, no question.
But
No,
But I mean-
I agree with linebacker too for sure. It seems like that's always kind of been a hole on the Browns team since they got competitive again.
yeah.
Outside of
yeah.
JOK.
Outside of JOK, Mohamed Diabite. You want to talk about some undrafted, pretty decent finds from Andrew Berry? That dude flies out there.
Yeah.
Well, the
No,
only
I like
problem with the
Diabite.
Browns.
No, but to go back to JOK if we can really quick. I mean, so
Please.
obviously I wouldn't expect him to play any at this point in the season.
No
I mean,
way.
You know what I mean? The
Hell
season's
no.
over.
Yeah.
But I mean, does it sound like he will potentially be on the roster? Because I mean, in the NFL, you could name on one hand all of the elite inside linebackers, off-ball linebackers. There are not guys that can play coverage and play the run like he does. I mean,
Right.
he's a great player.
And in a division like the AFC North, we
Yeah.
all know you need a guy like that.
Out of Notre Dame.
Lamar,
Yeah.
out of Notre Dame, of course.
But no, so
Yeah.
I mean, do you expect does it sound like he's going to be available? Obviously,
With-
we're talking a long time out, but
With no insider information that I know, I would probably give it like a 75-25% chance
Yeah.
in favor of him being back.
yeah.
We're not Jerome. We don't have any inside sources.
Yeah.
We can
Yeah.
do nothing but speculate here. But I mean, also, a big thing of coming back from big injuries like that is the workhorse level of the guy, and I fully expect JOK to be a guy that's going to battle for the team and do everything he can to be on the field next year. So
Yeah, especially the extension he just signed this past offseason.
I don't want to keep harping on all the Browns' holes because we could be here for the next damn week, but what are we going to do in the secondary as well? Because obviously outside of Denzel Ward, I mean, there's nothing there.
That's going to be an interesting one. You know what? I do like I expect Juan Thornhill to be cut, hopefully, because even when he's on the field, he's not too great. And when we were in Pittsburgh, Jerome and I saw him on the sideline for probably a minimum of 60% of the defensive snaps. I do like Ronnie Hickman, though, another undrafted decent find from Andrew Berry. I think he's a pretty good free safety. Obviously, Grant Delpit, great safety.
Yeah.
To your point, Denzel Ward, probably the best year of his career, I would say, this year. He's
Yep.
been absolutely locked down. And then we get to the two question marks, right? Emerson and Newsome. I think Emerson's going to be back regardless. Newsome's going to be interesting, though, because
Yeah.
he's going into his 5th year. So this would be the year to trade him. It's going to be trade him or extend him, basically. I think the only way he plays here next year is if we actually give him an extension. Other than that, I think we're going to deal him somewhere.
Yeah, it's crazy with Newsome. I mean, when he came out of the draft, he was a first-round pick. He looked like he was going to be every bit of a bona fide good cornerback in this league, and he's kind of fallen off this last year. He's really hasn't been as good as he was since his rookie season. So it'll be interesting to see what they do. But, I touched on it earlier with quarterback, and I'll say it again. In the NFL, you need team-first guys, and shout out Greg Newsome. I see you at the clubs, all that, pumping, but at the end of the day, I don't want my corners to go celebrate in the club after a loss. I mean, it's just kind of BS the way this guy he behaves. He's celebrating, after any play where we can be down 3 touchdowns, he's celebrating like we just won the Super Bowl. And I know it irks every Browns fan, no more than me. I mean, I really don't like that kind of stuff because
It irks me
team-first
too, and
guys.
I'm a Steeler.
Yeah. Yeah, no question. I mean, so if we're gonna look to move Newsome, we got to bring in somebody that's going to be about the team first and have a desire to win, and that should go without saying. But unfortunately for the Browns right now, it's just not. So
Yeah, I think it's hard to find with a lot of secondary players, though, and specifically
yeah.
Browns secondary players, because Grant Delpit does it. Denzel Ward's doing his guitar or
Yeah.
whatever he's doing when we're down 2 touchdowns on an incomplete pass.
And there's no question that from a football perspective, secondary is a position that you need to have an edge, maybe more than any position on the field. You need to have that cockiness in you, but to a limit, to a point. If the team,
Yeah.
if it's to the team's detriment, then it has no place on my team. That's for damn sure.
I agree.
I think that's the NFL in general. I mean, we obviously have our share of issues with a certain receiver in Pittsburgh. So I mean,
Yeah.
Greg Newsome clamped up at the end of that.
guess
Listen,
what?
man,
The
these guys are stars. They put their body on the line. They're on national TV. It's all about your brand these days. I get it, man, but I agree. When you're creating penalties or just being loud and being a distraction, it's just not good for the culture.
Yeah, no question. And let's not forget, you guys do have your problems, but it seems like those guys you dumped. Let's not forget. You
I was
had
just going to say that.
the best wide. You had the best wide receiver in the NFL, no question, hands down, and you got rid of him in a second. The second he started making noise.
Same with the running back.
Yep.
They did the same thing with Le'Veon.
Yep.
Yeah.
So you guys don't really care how good you are. That's why I think this might be Pickens last year. If not, there's no way he gets re-signed in Pittsburgh.
And
right?
I
mean,
think-
listen, he's the type of talent that you give $100 million to, but the way he's acting right now, I just can't imagine it. And I think another team will take that risk, but I think it could blow up on
the
whoever.
Steelers have shown they can draft receivers. I don't think that's going to be a problem for them. So if they have to move on from Pickens, I think they'll find somebody else. And yeah.
Again, we could get into it for hours.
But
but
no, we really could. But yeah, at the end of the day, it pisses me off to see a lot of these guys the way they act on the Browns right now, and I think it's a big problem. I also think that comes from the leadership. I think Stefanski is a great X's and O's guy. He's shown to be a solid coach, but at the end of the day, he doesn't discipline well. I think everybody knows that as a Browns fan. He doesn't discipline well.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not in the lock. I'm not seeing who he's disciplining and who he's yelling at and who he's not. So I don't know too much about that. I'd have to ask Jerome. He's got the inside sources on that
man.
one.
To your point, Rob, the front office doesn't really do him favors with the guys that they've had in and out of here.
Yeah, Kadarius Toney. Thank God you're off my football team. I can't stand that guy.
He can go spark a blunt on his Instagram stories elsewhere.
Yeah, he can. He can do it. Yeah, he can talk trash about whatever. Every team's giving up on you, buddy. But,
Yeah.
But yeah, so Browns season basically in the tank, and potentially looking at some college prospects. Let's preview some bowl games before we wrap up. I shouldn't even say bowl games, just the playoff games in general. Huge weekend. I got my Fighting Irish that are hosting the Indiana Hoosiers on Friday, and I gotta say I don't feel comfortable. I don't feel confident in this game for some reason. I think I'm gonna pick the Hoosiers to win, and I hate saying that. I just have a bad feeling. Over the last few weeks with Notre Dame not playing any games. I mean, granted, Indiana hasn't either, but I just don't feel confident with it right now. They should come in with their head held high, hosting a playoff game. The weather's not supposed to be great. You should have the edge talent-wise, obviously, and coaching-wise. Marcus Freeman just getting his extension. But there's just a gut feeling in me that tells me that the Irish aren't going to pull this one out.
All right. Well, I've been waiting for this one. I have a lot to say on this one.
This game in particular, or just college football?
This playoff format,
okay.
and the way it's kind of designed this year. So with this 12-team playoff, obviously it was designed to give a lot of these lower-level teams a chance. But if you look at the scope of college football, especially over the last 10, 20 years, there's really 4 teams that stick out. Georgia, Alabama, Clemson, Ohio State. Those are the teams that have been dominating, making the playoff every year. And, when you have a team going up against Indiana, going up against a bona fide blue blood like a Notre Dame, I just don't think it's going to be a competition. I think Notre Dame will end up winning handedly because they have the 5-star recruits. They have the better coach. They have the better quarterback. They have
home field.
They have top down the better roster, and that's
Yep.
just the way it's going to be in college football. I mean, you can't fight that. You bring in teams like Indiana, SMU. I'm sorry, I think these teams are going to get dog walked in the playoffs, and it's going to end up being at the end of it. I think you're going to have either Oregon or Ohio State or Georgia as your champion because those are the teams that are getting the 5-star guys, and those are the better football teams.
Okay. To me, I honestly disagree. I mean, I think that is true in the short term. But I think when you open up the competition in the playoff to more teams, recruits will see a lot of these kind of intermediate schools. You can win here. Where everyone's getting NIL budgets now. I mean, I think we have to wait a little bit longer to see how it transforms college football. I think this year's an interesting example because, outside of Oregon, obviously being, a juggernaut, there aren't really any other great teams. I don't know how the playoff will shake out. I'm not huge on Texas or Ohio State right now. So I feel like it's a pretty open playing field. And, this game in particular, I think Indiana started the year super hot, right? And I honestly, down the stretch, they faded a little bit. I honestly thought they would play Ohio State a lot tougher than they did. That was kind of a disappointing, result for them, I'm sure. So this is going to be a tough litmus test. I am taking Notre Dame in this one, but I think Indiana can hang with them at least, for three quarters. So.
Yeah, I think Nate, to your point of just the transfer portal in general, with how much parity there is in college football right now. I agree with you, Rob. Over the last 6-7 years, it seems like those 4 teams have dominated, and there's been a couple teams like the Oklahomas and Notre Dames that have squeaked in there a couple of years.
Yeah.
That have made their name known in there. Yeah, Washington's been in there a couple of years. But I think we're just in such a day and age now where the recruits don't even matter as much, really. They don't. I mean, we saw Devontae Smith, different Devontae Smith, but he went to Alabama. Alabama's starting strong safety just transferred to Notre Dame out of nowhere. So next year, I mean, he's a starting safety for a 9-3 elite team that's probably going to be in the playoff picture next year, and they're just transferring away because they can.
I mean,
so I think it comes down to who you can play for immediately, and who's got the money. And Quinshon Judkins transferred from Ole Miss. Ole Miss quality program, and Caleb Downs and I'm forgetting his name, but another Alabama offensive lineman, 2 starters. After they had a playoff appearance last year, just transferred to Ohio State out of nowhere. So I mean, we don't know what these teams are going to look like next year, the year after. I think there's a lot of switch ups that are going to happen, and I think it makes it. I wasn't a fan of it originally, and I'm still teetering on whether I'm a fan or not. But I love the parity that it brings to the sport.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a good point. And to play devil's advocate with myself, I mean, yeah, you have a lot of guys that are going to end up chasing the money right now. And, they're going to go wherever they feel like they might have a fighting chance to win or wherever they can make the most money. So, yeah, I mean, it might open up the field a little bit more. But I'm sorry, I still see this is going to end up being Ohio State and Oregon. One of those 2 teams going to be crowned the champion, in my opinion. So we'll see if that take lasts, but.
So if Ohio State beats Tennessee this weekend,
they face Oregon.
They face into Oregon. Whoever wins that game, you're picking to win it all.
I would do that. Yeah. 100%.
Okay. So if Ohio State loses this weekend, Oregon's the champ.
Wow. I mean, listen.
They do have a tough road. I mean,
Oregon's got oh my God, man.
Yeah.
You want to talk about not rewarding the 1 seed at all? The playoff. I think they got it right with the amount of teams. To be honest with you, maybe there's a few too many in there. But I think they got to adjust it to where it reseeds after the first round, and you actually reward the better teams, and they face the worst teams.
Yeah.
Because Oregon's first game's against Ohio State, and then after that they're going to the semifinal, and you're going to face another blue blood, I should say.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a tough road for Oregon for sure.
Well, maybe they did that just to go against what I was saying earlier. Maybe they did that because they don't want to see those teams dominating. They want to open up the field a little bit more and get these, the SMUs and the Indianas of the world a fighting chance.
Yeah, to touch on your Ohio State take, I'm surprised you feel that strongly about this team. I didn't grow up an Ohio State fan. I've lived here for 8 years, though, watch a ton of Ohio State. My girlfriend's family are crazy Ohio State people. But, this year, I'm not convinced by the quarterback play. The running backs are obviously incredible, but the play calling has not impressed me whatsoever. I get a little concerned about the secondary, and I feel like when they don't blitz, they don't have much pass rush at all. They don't create a lot of pressure. I think Ohio State's definitely a good team. Obviously, they are one of the best teams in the country, but I don't know if they're going to make it, to the college football championship, let alone win it.
Do you think this is like, when it comes to just Ohio State in general, obviously the last 5 years have been up and down for Ryan Day, most of the downs coming against Michigan, of course. But do you think it comes to, because there's a lot of criticism in the Ohio State fan base right now on whether or not.
Oh, we're gonna get into this.
Yeah, we're gonna get into it, but we got to spend a very brief amount of time on it. Is this a must-win for Ryan Day to keep his job in Columbus?
I would say
it's obviously a must-win for the season, obviously, but for Ryan Day specifically, is it a must-win to keep his job?
I would say the Tennessee game. You're gonna have to beat Tennessee to at least have a shot of getting brought back next year. Excuse me. I do think at the end of the day, it's ludicrous that people are talking about a guy that's lost 5 games in his entire college career getting canned. I understand I understand the culture that they have at Ohio State and that they want to only bring in guys who are going to beat Michigan and win them titles. And Ryan Day hasn't done either of those things. So if you do get rid of Ryan Day, if you can find somebody better, fine. The problem is, who are you going to find better than Ryan Day right now? And you got a lot of guys talking about Vrabel, and Vrabel's an NFL guy. He's not going to leave the NFL.
Yeah, and another person I should say that Ohio State fans were looking at was Marcus Freeman from Notre Dame, just because he went to school and played football there. But he just signed an extension, so good luck on that one.
Yeah, for me, I think it is a must-win for him to keep his job, but I'm also of the opinion, I don't know if I would have brought him back this year. And I mean, I can appreciate what you're saying, Rob, but when you coach in Columbus, there's only one game that matters.
Yeah.
And if you can't beat Michigan, that's a big deal.
Yeah.
You can make the argument that he hasn't had fantastic quarterback play the last 2 years. But to your point, you're in Ohio State. I mean, your roster is loaded. I mean, he's not doing a lot with that team right now.
He didn't beat him with Stroud either.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that is to me is a bigger problem.
And he didn't win a title with Fields either. So, yeah, there are indictments against him for sure. But, I mean, at the end of the day, you are talking about a guy that's lost 5 games in his college career. 5 games that speaks for itself. But yeah, there is one job. You got to beat Michigan. You have to beat Michigan.
Yeah.
But I do agree with you, Nate. This year, I think is the laser beam is on him right now, because now you have 4 straight losses to Michigan.
Because they didn't play in 2020, if I remember correctly, right?
Yeah.
Because they only played 5 games.
And 2 was enough to get Ohio State fans shaking in their boots. 3 lit their asses on fire, and 4 is like, okay, what the fuck is this guy doing? And at the end of the day, yeah, like you said, you got one job. You got to beat Michigan, and to have 4 straight losses is unacceptable.
Well, the last 2 weren't even against Harbaugh. I mean, last year it was his team, but he wasn't coaching, so it's
and this year,
a good point.
This year was just an absolute embarrassment.
This was the year they needed to show up, and obviously the Michigan team had a lot of problems this year, but this was the year they needed to show up and just kick the shit out of that team. And the fact that they didn't, obviously we all saw what happened after the game. I mean, it's embarrassing for the school. So yes, this is a must-win in my opinion for him to stay.
Okay.
Yeah. But I still think that Michigan should be able to plant the flag if they want, and there should be no legislation put in place against
there shouldn't
that.
be a law.
I was going to say, that is soft. We don't support that.
That's one of the softest things I've ever seen in my entire life.
And I think the whole Ohio State fan base, me included, is in agreement on that. That's absolutely absurd.
Yeah, I mean, last thing I'll say is that you might not like it, but if Michigan beats you at home, they should be able to plant the flag. That's my opinion.
I agree.
There's no question about it.
Don't fight after the game. Fight harder.
No, what are your guys' predictions for this game then? Tennessee at Ohio State.
I'm gonna take Ohio State 35-17.
High scoring affair in the cold weather. Nate, what do we think?
I don't necessarily have a score prediction. I don't know that it'll be that high scoring, to be honest with you, but I am taking Ohio State in this one.
I think I'm taking Ohio State too. I'm going to go 23-17 Buckeyes. I think it's going to be a good game. I just think the home field advantage is going to play to their favor. Now, I don't know how much the cold weather is really going to play into their favor, considering these players come from everywhere, man.
Yeah.
So
but Tennessee was practicing indoors this week. We saw that. So.
Oh, were they?
Yeah, Tennessee was practicing indoors. A lot of people are posting about it on Twitter. Now, I have my problems with Twitter, but Twitter was right about that one.
Twitter was right about it. Okay. All right, and then moving to the last 2 games of the slate that we got this weekend, SMU at Penn State and Clemson at Texas. I feel Clemson's going to play big-time upset this weekend. I've got the Tigers going into Texas and getting the W, I think.
Wow.
I trust Dabo Swinney in these positions, and I haven't seen anything too impressive out of Texas when they've faced an elite program. So I'm going Clemson.
I'm honestly, it's a tough game for me because I just don't know what Clemson team's going to show up. They've been up and down this year. I'm a Pitt fan. Pitt almost upset them with their second string quarterback. And they've had other games like that. I honestly thought SMU was going to beat Clemson in the ACC championship, and then Clemson came out with a pretty dominant first half, really first 3 quarters before an almost epic collapse. So obviously Clemson, that program has the pedigree. They've got Dabo, but I'm going to take Texas in that one.
Taking Texas, okay.
Yeah, I'll go with Clemson pretty pretty much for the reason you stated, Kevin, is I trust Dabo Swinney in a game like this. Now, again, their roster isn't clearly as loaded as it was back in the Deshaun Watson days and the Trevor Lawrence days, but I think at the end of the day, Dabo's going to be able to coach him up, get the win. And yeah, I mean, Texas has really shown that they fold a lot in big games. So
They do. Yeah.
You guys you guys don't have faith in Sark. No faith. I mean, Dabo, you have to remember, if he didn't have that huge buyout contract, he might have been gone last year. I mean, they wanted him out for a while. Obviously, this is a different year. He's got this team playing well. To your point, they're not as talented as they have been in the past. But Texas, they've got a good coach as well. So
he's all right. I don't mind him. The penalties for Texas, though, they just keep shooting themselves in the foot.
Yep.
But I think if Clemson does pull this one out, I think they've got a path to the semifinal because they've got Arizona State then in round 2, whoever wins this. So Clemson, they win this game. I think they're going to the semifinal.
Yeah, we'll see.
I'll tell you what, I like that Arizona State team too.
Yeah, that
Scadaboo.
Yeah,
Scadaboo's sweet.
Yeah, the running back's fun to watch.
When they were missing their best receiver in that first game too. Yeah. So I think they could play spoiler, but that's for another time.
And then
SMU Penn State.
SMU against Nate's home state, Penn State.
Yeah.
What are we thinking there? I think Penn State rolls.
I think so too.
With how tough they played against Oregon this past week, that actually really surprised me. And they proved that they can at least hang with the big boys, so I don't expect it. I expect like a 2-touchdown win from Penn State this weekend.
Yeah, I'm gonna just resort to what I was saying earlier about I think if you look at Penn State's roster top to bottom, you could probably pinpoint every position group and probably say Penn State's a little bit better, if not very much better everywhere on the field.
Right.
I do think that this is a good game. This is a huge game for James Franklin, actually, because a lot of people have been, pointing the laser at him and saying, hey, what the hell has this guy done for us? Penn State's supposed to be...
Has he ever won a big game?
No, I can't
think of one.
No, that was the point I was going to make is I don't know if I trust James Franklin. I think Penn State clearly is the better team. Drew Allard just said he's coming back next year, so clearly he's locked in. No focus on anything else except Penn State football.
I think that was a great decision by him, by the way.
I agree with that. But, SMU has been explosive. I would take Penn State and the points, but you never know, right?
That game at University Park. That game's at University Park.
Oh yeah,
too.
Well, yeah. And have you guys seen the fiasco with the tickets? I think the cheapest ticket to get into a Penn State home game this year was like $200. This is their first home college, playoff game, and tickets are like $60 to get in right now.
Oh,
no idea what's going on over there.
I was talking with my girlfriend Alex about. This is before the actual rankings got released, the final bracket got released, and I was looking at potentially taking off a Friday or something and going to South Bend because I knew that they were going to be hosting a playoff game, and tickets were like $400 a pop, and I was like, you know what, if they end up facing like SMU or Indiana, it might get lower than that, so I'll hold off. $1,400 as soon as it got to release that it was an in-state rival. I was like, I should have just bought a couple tickets and sold them, man, because that's your
elitist fan base, man. Notre Dame's got all the rich guys there.
I was thinking about taking my ass down to Columbus this weekend, but it was out of my budget a little bit, so it was like $360, $370 or something like that. I think cheapest ticket to get in. So
right, but that makes sense. $1,400 is a little crazy, but yeah, Penn State, maybe their fans aren't locked in for this. No whiteout, huh?
Yeah, they should have a whiteout. What the hell's up with that?
Yeah,
I mean, Penn State is a tough place to play. I mean, you got one of the best fan bases in all of college football. Aside from this ticket fiasco thing, I think they'll end up, especially if they're cheaper, they're going to show up and show out. You're going to get some rowdy boys in there. Shotgun and beers and hitting Champs Bar right after, too.
So consensus among the panel, we've got 2 games unanimous, Penn State over SMU, Ohio State over Tennessee, split on Texas Clemson, and kind of semi-split on Notre Dame Indiana. I feel uncomfortable, but also unconfident. I don't really know. It's a weird game for me going into it, but I'm glad it's the first ever 12-team playoff game. Notre Dame's hosting it. I'm proud of that. And,
I'm going with the Blue Bloods.
The Blue Bloods. Yeah, you are. You are. So I think, unless you guys have anything else, I think that might be it for this episode.
I don't know. Did you want to touch on Cavs briefly or no? They haven't really, they've had a little bit of rest here, which is great, holding on to the 1 seed still.
I dabble. Yeah. I dabble. I got some things.
All right,
I got some shit to say.
Go for me. Go for it. Go for it.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, I think when you look at the Cavs in the grand scheme of things, this has been a fun year. Let's not mince words here.
Absolutely.
It's been a really fun year to watch Cleveland Cavaliers basketball. But there's still something about this team that when I look at them, I'm just not confident that they could go into Boston and beat a team like Boston in a 7-game series. I mean, Boston right now, aside from all the hate that they get from Cleveland fans, and rightfully so, they're assholes. We all know that. But they are right now what the Warriors were a couple years ago with, not as many championships, but they've been dominant in this field in the last 3 years, and that worries me about the Cavs. So I think what the Cavs need to do is and this has been a problem since LeBron left, they need to go grab an elite shooting wing who can defend as well, and that's obviously tough to find. But you do have a guy like Cam Johnson you can maybe take a look at and see if you can maybe trade some pieces away and improve the roster.
Or are you forgetting about somebody who's making a return?
Max Strus.
Yeah, but I mean, do we really place that high stakes on Max Strus?
I don't. He shoots a lot, and he shoots like 34%.
Yeah.
So I don't put a lot into Max Strus.
And Cam
I'm
Johnson
a Max.
could strap that thing.
We
know that.
No, for sure. I mean, hey, I'm a Max Strus believer, but I understand that. I think the Boston team, very much like those Warriors teams, is just so obnoxious. And obviously, we're Cleveland fans, but I mean, dude, Jason Tatum is one of the most unlikable superstars in a while because it feels so forced and so assisted. But the one question I would ask both of you is it one seed or bust for the Cavs at this point?
Yeah, I mean, you definitely
need it,
really,
right?
You would really like to have home court advantage for sure. I mean,
I would say it's conference finals or bust. I think they can get away with the 2 seed, 1 or 2 seed, but you better be hosting. You better be going into the Eastern Conference. I mean, you start the season off like this, you got to be at least represented in the Eastern Conference Finals. You have to be.
And let's hope the Hawks don't sneak in and we end up playing the Hawks.
I said that
somehow.
last week.
Yeah, seriously.
We can't get past that damn Trae Young.
Yeah.
But, Rob, I like your point. I brought that up to Jerome, I think, a couple weeks ago. But I do love that. I love that Warriors comparison for this Cavs team because it seemed like last year a lot of the talent was there, but they didn't have the right coach. Same thing with
Boston to.
Well, you brought up the Warriors team, didn't you?
But Boston was who I was talking about as comparison to the Warriors, but.
Oh, okay. My apologies.
No, but continue. No,
but no. Yeah. So I had mentioned that to Jerome a couple weeks ago. Was the Mark Jackson led Warriors? They had all the talent there, but they just couldn't put it together. And they fire him and bring in Steve Kerr. The Cavs fire JB Bickerstaff, bring in Kenny Atkinson, and they start off the season on a roll. And it looks like they're playing a lot of cohesive basketball, and I love watching it. And it reminds me a lot of those teams, those 2015 Warriors teams, 2014, 2015 Warriors teams.
Yeah.
And I think hopefully it was Atkinson that was the missing piece to this squad. And if they do need to add something else, I would agree it'd be one of those 3-and-D wings, which, as you said, very hard to find. I think they've tried to get a Coro there, and he's gotten close, but he's not consistent enough shooting wise. I've always said he's a pretty good slasher, but an elite defender and very inconsistent from 3. And if he can just consistently shoot between 35 to 39% from 3, I think we have that guy already. It's just a matter of him coming into that role.
What you really need from the Cavs this year is you need Darius Garland to show up in the playoffs too, because that guy has been missing in the playoffs for the last couple of years. Obviously, last year there's a caveat. He had the broken jaw. Everyone knows he was going through the mental health issues with his grandma passing away and all that jazz. And R.I.P. to her. But at the end of the day, this guy is now on a huge contract, and he has to show up like he's getting paid.
No, 100%. I mean, it's a star-driven league, and he is one of our stars for sure. And last year, I mean, you felt, his performance was down, and the team really, really felt that. And, they need to be healthy this year in the postseason. If they are, I think Eastern Conference Finals is definitely in the picture.
Yeah, and I think people forgot a lot about that this guy last year in the playoffs was just 2 years removed from an All-Star appearance, and he's still 24 years old. I didn't understand the reason of, we got to get rid of this guy now.
Yeah.
Why? He's 2 years removed from an All-Star appearance, and he had, I think that entire year last year was, to your point, Rob, very, very much of a fluke. He was dealing with everything under the sun, family issues or off the court issues, and
broke the jaw.
His injuries and themselves. If all that stuff was going on in my life, whether it's basketball or not, I'm probably not going to show up to work in the best state of mind. So
I think he was also just trying to do too much, man. I mean, the turnovers have been a problem kind of since he came into the league. It was something we kind of hoped would fade away. But last year, it just really felt like he was pressing a lot because he knew he wasn't playing that well.
Yeah. No question
so
about it.
It seems like he's a lot more relaxed to me and obviously much better player than he was last year.
Well, who's going to come out of the West?
You want to talk about a pick'em over there? I have no idea. I think the Thunder are just too young of a team to pick to come out of the West.
Yeah.
Nuggets can never count them out. Warriors can never really count them out.
Yep. T-Wolves are still in the mix.
T-Wolves are great.
Yeah.
The Rockets have been a surprise team, man.
They
The
have
Rockets
been
have been
for
fun to
sure.
watch this year.
Yeah. They definitely
Their
have
young
been.
core finally coming together. They remind me of before the Cavs got Donovan Mitchell. Like all their young draft picks are just playing well together, and they're like
Yeah.
a star away from really making some noise.
Oh yeah, Amen Thompson.
Yeah.
If I was a betting man, which I'm not, no advertisements from FanDuel from me here, but if I was, I would probably say Boston and Denver. I'd probably go for a repeat of 2022 with Boston coming out on top.
You hate to hear that.
Is both a Cleveland fan and a NBA fan.
You hate to hear that.
Hey, using my brain, not my heart.
But we got anything else, gentlemen?
No, I mean, again,
Boneless
excited to be
wings.
here. I'm glad. I hope Jerome feels better, but I'm glad we got this opportunity. I really
Yeah,
am.
I feel bad for the germs inside of Jerome's body. You want to talk about a fighter?
Yeah.
Those germs stand no chance.
The last thing I want to say is boneless wings are absolutely acceptable.
Absolutely.
Despite all the shit.
Great
that Jerome
callback to
talked on 'em.
episode 3. Great callback to episode 3.
Yeah, no question about
But-
it. Give me a nice GP boneless wing. I'm going in.
It's garlic parm for you kids out there. But yeah. So for me, for Nate, for Rob, thank you two so much for joining this episode. Greatly appreciate it. Great to have you guys on. Hopefully we have you on in the future. For producer Eric, phenomenal job once again. Thank you so much. And please, to everybody listening, comment on this episode. Tweet at us at CLE Sports Realm. Message us questions, arguments you may have. Happy to engage with you guys. And be sure to favorite this podcast, like it, follow us, subscribe to us on YouTube, and just turn on those notifications. It helps you not miss any episodes and helps us out, helps the algorithm out. So we appreciate it. And go Brownies.
Repost it on your Instagram story too.
That too.